Good morning. We are here on our new show, Points of Change, which this morning we are going to be discussing dealing with uncertainty and how to actually get through times and difficulties where we face uncertainty in life. I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, James Kilgarriff. We are going to be talking about uncertainty, maybe a few other things. We'll see what comes up. Join in the conversation in the chat if you would like to. Let's start the show. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Johnny. How are you there in Spain?
Pretty good. It's cold, but it's sunny here in Valencia, and so I can't complain. And I've got my coffee. I'm always happy when I've got coffee in my hand. So
yeah. I know what it feels like. Yeah, first thing in the morning, coffee. But yeah, so we're going to be talking today about uncertainty. It's an interesting subject. It's very relevant for this time, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are all different kinds of uncertainty. Certainly there are these obvious levels of uncertainty at the moment around COVID and work situations and things like that. But these are not restricted to sort of exceptional times. This is something that comes up all of the time potentially for people, and for people like us who work as coaches. We encounter it, as we've discussed before, with many of our clients we work with, as well as dealing with these situations ourselves often as well.
Right,
we're not immune to it ourselves, right?
Hey, I wish I was, but yeah. I mean, uncertainty. I'm dealing with clients at the moment whose businesses have gone kind of down south, as it were. Others who are trying to get out of their businesses. But uncertainty is not just because of things like COVID, but changing of life circumstances, finishing one business, starting another. I've got some of my clients who are in their late 30s, early 40s, are going through a life crisis, a midlife crisis, although they're doing very, very well, and they're facing a different uncertainty. But we come back to what COVID has done to the world. Yes, it's forced us into this space of not knowing what's next. And I'd like to quote something from a Buddhist monk. He passed away some years ago, called Ajahn Chah. He said, "All these worries and doubts that you have are about things that that are uncertain. What do you think happens when you try to make something that is inherently uncertain certain?" He says, "You create suffering." Yeah, and life is inherently uncertain, but we try so hard to control, to put our thoughts around it. And I mean, there's a certain amount of goodness in that. We got to realize that we're in the driving seat of our lives, but at the end of the day, life is uncertain. We don't know what's going to come around the corner. Like this COVID thing was a black swan event, and black swan is what? An uncertain event. And there'll probably be more black swan events. And so as a result, it's forcing people to come back to the here and now. Yes, we can plan, but we can't plan like we used to. So what we're left with is this uncertainty, and it brings up a lot of stuff. It brings up a lot of fear, anxiety, overthinking about the future, and so on. And so perhaps this uncertainty is also an opportunity to maybe to wake up to a certain level of yourself about who you are, what you're doing, how you want to relate going forward. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think we often get ourselves in life into positions where we like predictability. We like to have a pretty good idea what's coming from day to day. But there are always going to be curveballs. There are always going to be things that may come and completely throw you off your regular predicted scheduling and whatever you were expecting to come up for you, because life just keeps happening. The best laid plans of mice and men, so on. But life is going to keep happening regardless. And so I think to a great degree, that sort of certainty, that predictability is illusory anyway. It's something that we try to give ourselves. And to be honest, I think we're wired for it as well. Our brains work that way, and we should, to some degree, we have to thank our brains for doing a great job of taking care of us and helping us with survival. But there are times when it doesn't necessarily work for us, where this sort of survival functionality of our brains that has come from generations and ancestors before, that we wouldn't be here without, is still active. It's still sort of the daily threats from predatory animals or from attacks and that people our ancestors would have had are no longer really there in the same way. We don't face daily existential threats in the same way that we did in history, and yet our brains are still wired to look for it and to respond for it. And I think it's that sort of feeling that we try and give ourselves security or certainty that we know what's coming and we can more or less assume and predict each day. It's a comfort. It's a comfort to us because we feel safe. We feel safe when we have that, but it is illusory because anything could come and shatter that at any time. And I think if we're not actually in any way prepared for that or allowing for that possibility, we're probably going to take the hit a lot harder than if we were. This is, you'll know from chats with me that I love Stoic philosophy, and that one of the biggest helps that I've got personally from studying Stoic philosophies like Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, is this idea or this concept of appreciating what you've got and recognizing you could lose everything, and actually visualizing it all, visualizing the loss and what your life would be like and feel like without it. It can be a form of mental preparation for that. And that to me has been very powerful in helping me at least feel more mentally resilient for when the slings and arrows of life do get hold.
Yeah, no, what you're saying is good. They say what you bring up into consciousness, you push down, will eat you from the inside, or at least it could kill you, right? So by bringing up, what would it be like if I lost everything, my work and my health, and relying on the government for support and all the rest of it? Bring that up. And some people say, if you think that way, you'll start attracting it. No, it's just bringing it up, bringing up your deepest fears, and finding some space around it, finding some acceptance for the things that perhaps are it's accepting the unacceptable. Now, I'm not saying you go down that path, but it's allowing yourself to do that. Now, I know that Stoicism, if I was going to bring up that thing, that Stoicism is saying that we have relatively little power over our lives. When I read that, we don't have much power over the course of our lives. But however, we've got one thing: we have the power to respond. So we can either react or we can respond. So reaction comes from, should we say, the monkey brain, reacting, getting into fear, getting protected, getting defensive. Or we can say, well, what can I do to respond to the situation? Right, I've lost my job, or my business is not working, or I was doing talking events or whatever. What can I do to respond to this situation? Well, first of all, I can perhaps deal with what's coming up for myself. What's another response? Maybe we can try something new, a new project, whatever. So it's like either we react or we respond. There's a choice. At the end of the day, is in Stoicism, they say everything is a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, we have quite an amazing comment from Francis, who's watching us on LinkedIn. So Francis says, my life circumstances have changed since last April. My daughter's boyfriend of 9 years at age 24 was diagnosed with stage 4 I don't know how to say that, glioblastoma, which doesn't sound good, in the spine, which has paralyzed him. And this is the most challenging time of our lives. I'm now supporting them to fundraise for private treatment as the NHS protocols are so restricted, way out of my comfort zone in asking for big funds, but I'm compelled to do it. Francis, thank you for sharing that with us. Well, yeah, I mean, definitely what an unexpected event. Yeah, but compelled to take action and meet the challenge. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. So perhaps what suggestions could be available? I mean, I've never had that situation happen to me, but
I was fortunate enough to have a conversation a little while back with a lady called Heidi Loughlin. I'm pronouncing it correctly. And so some people watching this may have seen that or have caught that. Heidi might be watching herself. I'm not sure, but Heidi is someone who was diagnosed with cancer, and she was like stage 4, diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I think it was breast cancer. She might correct me on that. So she's had surgery. She's really not been expected to still be alive, and yet she's taken all of that and taking it as being grateful for every day. She's out there making people laugh and showing people that it's not over till it's over. Like, you might have a bleak diagnosis, seem like a bleak future ahead of you, but how you meet that, how you greet that, because her story it's horrific. You wouldn't want to put your worst enemy through what she went through, and losing a child and all this sort of stuff as well because of it, and just absolutely horrendous. And yet she is really committed to being out there helping people get through it with laughter and reframe themselves and still find joy in their lives, and moving past this sort of grief and overwhelm and this sort of terrible feeling of life. That really wonderful. She's honestly a wonderful person, and I wish her the very best for the future. And loved talking to her. Definitely recommend anyone to check out that conversation as well. If you're sort of thinking, how much can I cope with? How much can I deal with? You can. It's amazing. If you're still here, you can deal with it, but you have to work on the mindset part of it. It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel sad, that you're not going to have grief or loss or difficult times in life, but it's either let it beat you or you don't, and you still get to choose how you go on. Once you get yourself to a point where you can do that. And I think of particularly someone like Hal Elrod, the Miracle Morning guy, his story, where he was in a horrendous car accident. I think in his story he says he actually died momentarily, was brought back, was told he was never going to walk again, and after allowing himself a little bit of grieving time, decided that he was going to be, I think he said 5 minutes or something. He decided he was going to be, if he was going to be in a wheelchair the rest of his life, he was going to be the happiest person you've ever met in a wheelchair. And I'm thinking, that to me is amazing. It's not easy to do. And no one's saying this is easy. It's easy to say these things, but we know it's not easy to do these things. But to get your mind into that kind of place and just to say, I can either spend all my time feeling sorry for myself and deciding that life is against me, the universe is against me, and nothing's ever going to be good. In doing so, I think you're robbing yourself of all the potential joy and happiness in the future for yourself as well.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking about Patrick Swayze in the Dirty Dancing movie. He had cancer and he didn't give into it. He kept going till the very, very end. In fact, while he had the cancer, just maybe a couple of weeks before he passed away, he was still acting. He was still doing movies. He didn't allow the thing to beat him. So he responded to the situation. Yeah. Right. I don't know, when things get on top of you, when you're going through a loss of health or whatever, or a loved one or whatever. Yep, we have to also in times of uncertainty ask for help, reach out. Yeah. So we can have the mindset. We can say, okay, how can I respond? Well, maybe one of the responses is to reach out, find someone to support you through it. You maybe talk through your craziness. And sometimes I've noticed it with my clients, when they talk through their difficulties, they somehow get more clarity because they've spoken to someone about it. Someone can just listen to you without judging you. I found that very good through my own crisis some years ago when I lost everything, and it came out of left field and all the rest of it. It was a death, and I lost here and I lost there, and I lost everything in 4 months. But one thing that was important for me was important to say, I can't do this by myself. I need to reach out and ask for help or some kind of support. That helps during uncertainty times as well.
Yeah, I find it interesting. Like, I talk about how much I like Stoicism and the philosophy behind that, and I find it very, very helpful. And yet, when often in sort of English language we talk about being stoic, it doesn't actually that much relate to Stoicism. It really relates more to this sort of stiff upper lip, not showing emotion, managing yourself, and not being a burden on anyone, just sort of putting on your best brave face and push down all the emotions, which definitely isn't Stoicism. But we describe that as being stoic. Carry on regardless, keep calm and carry on. It's like that stoic attitude that we often talk about, and I think that it's a mistake to think about that. But there is this sort of almost conditioning or training, if you like, that we seem to have that says that's how you're supposed to be. And maybe not everyone feels that, but I think a lot of people do. I feel that I grew up feeling that. I don't know, I can't pinpoint specifically where that came from in my life, other than just having a general awareness that that seems to, that's seemingly how you're supposed to show up, and not be a burden on anyone, and just put your best face on and go out and face the world anyway, regardless of what's going on in your life. Don't let anyone else know. Don't let them have to deal with it.
Yeah, well, vulnerability is weak in society when you're vulnerable. It's like me when I grew up, I had to sort of figure it out myself. But when I lost everything, I got very vulnerable, and I realized it wasn't weak, it was strength. So sometimes when you say, you know what, I can't deal with this anymore, it's just too much. I've come to the end of the road. I can't handle it anymore. By the way, they're all conditions of the mind. It's all the mind. It's all the mind stuff playing, but it's very, very compelling. It's okay to feel vulnerable. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to feel confused. It's okay to not know what to do in that moment. And it's embracing the thing that you don't particularly like or want that's going through your mind. But by you being vulnerable, you're actually showing great inner strength, because there are times when we can't cope with things. And by you being vulnerable and doing that and practicing doing that, not all the time to everyone, because as Wayne Dyer, we talked about Wayne Dyer before, your biography becomes your biology. So you don't be telling every man and every woman in the world, this has happened to me, this has happened, poor me, you can go into victim mode, right? So there's a fine line by falling into, this is what's happened to me, I've lost all this, and please feel sorry for me, to, sharing your vulnerabilities on with the right kind of people who will support you, but not tell the whole world all the time, because as I say, your biography becomes your biology.
I love that. I hadn't remembered that from Wayne Dyer, but we had our regular weekly call a little while before coming live today, and we were discussing Wayne Dyer a bit, and what an influence and impact he had on us at the time. But no, absolutely. I find the whole thing sort of fascinating of victim mentality. That even then we view that as being like a terrible thing. It's almost like a really horrible judgment on somebody. It's just something that we tend to fall into. It's natural to, I think, feel a bit sorry for ourselves. So much of the personal development world is based around this idea of moving from being in effect in your life, which I guess is a definition of victim mentality to a degree, to being at cause, as people talk about, which is taking full responsibility for your life. And I think people maybe have different ideas about what that means for them, but we all fall into these sorts of feeling a bit sorry for ourselves sometimes. I don't think there's anything bad about that. It's just not always helpful for us, and it's definitely not helpful if we stay there too long, and that's where it starts to become a problem. Because I do think it's very possible to go through your whole life feeling that other people need to take care of you, and to absorb. A lot of people, I think, try to absolve themselves of responsibility for decision making or making changes in their lives, and let other people take responsibility for that. It's incredibly disempowering, and I don't think it's a healthy way to live. But people have to figure out their own way through life. It's certainly not wouldn't want that to be my journey. But that's the goal of a lot of personal and professional development work, is to move people into feeling that they have the responsibility for their life. And the big part of that is going to be dealing with uncertainty in a positive way, or taking what seems like a challenge and turning that into an opportunity. That is one of the hardest things to do in life.
Yep. And I think the world is now being given the lesson of embracing uncertainty, but also with that comes that, as you said, that opportunity, that gift to awaken to who you really are, to awaken that you have the power. You're not really a victim, although it might appear that way. Yeah. And, some of the symptoms of a victim is when we blame a lot and complain a lot and justify too much. So we've got to just notice, and we all do it, either consciously or unconsciously. We all kind of judge, blame, complain. The less you do it, the less you'll be in that victim mode. Yeah. And so, I mean, there's some maybe so let's look at some of the ways in which people can kind of work with the uncertainty. Work with say working with a situation that you don't particularly like is actually a form of wisdom. So, what would be ways to deal with uncertainty? I mean, one of the ways is accept the fact that maybe I'm not in control of it all. That could be the first thing, is coming to the fact that acceptance is the beginning of change, or change of awareness. That's one thing. What other things would you put forth? You mentioned about being grateful or appreciative for the way things are.
Yeah, and that really comes from an examination of being willing to spend some time imagining your life without all the wonderful things and people that are in it right now. And I think that
Mm.
probably applies more to people, but I mean, certainly it's not a good thing in life if you lose all your money or your possessions, and so that could be a very traumatic experience as well. And there are many other things besides as well. But sometimes it can be the how these things happen can be
Mm.
also very, very horrendous. Being able to imagine your life without these things and see past that, it shouldn't be to a point. When I had a chat with the philosopher Donald Robertson, who is a Stoicism expert, a while back on my Speaking of Influence show, one of the things he was saying is that one of the reasons why I'm trying to remember what the sort of negative visualization thing can be problematic sometimes for people, is not spending enough time with it, like not actually spending enough time imagining those things to really sort of work through it and work through the emotions that come up from it. You can actually end up potentially turning up your level of trauma and negative emotion around this instead, and actually sensitizing yourself rather than more desensitizing yourself to be able to manage and deal with the stuff. The idea of it really is to really sit with it and go through it and let the emotions come through and process through them, to get yourself to a point where you realize you can deal with it, and that you're not actually creating those things in your life by visualizing them. I think that's also in our world of where so many people talk about law of attraction and things like that, where people maybe imagine that, well, if I start visualizing it, I'm sort of like hexing myself or putting it out there to the universe that's what I'm going to attract. No, it's not that, and it doesn't work like that. It really is a form of building up your own internal mental resilience so you can handle the world better. And one thing that I found from doing that particular exercise has been to be able to feel more appreciation for the people in my life, to feel more appreciation for the opportunities that I have, to feel more grateful for each day that I wake up as an opportunity to do something good and put some good into the world, and hopefully help at least one person every day. Those are the things that I end up moving into thinking about much more because of doing that. Because I think the tendency is, if you're in this sort of thing of the world's happening to you sort of mentality, you're really only focused on yourself. It's very hard to be thinking about helping other people or being of service or putting stuff out there. You kind of end up moving into survival mode, where it's really hard to think yourself outside of that.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, some of the practices is you bring the stuff up, but don't get over. Stay with the feelings. Eckhart Tolle talks about this in his books like The New Earth and so on. It's like, it's okay. He says, don't. He says to somebody, don't mind being unhappy for a while, because we can make a story about being unhappy. We can make a lot of stories in our mind. I shouldn't be unhappy. So it's important to, if you want to move through it, is to allow the feelings to move through, because at the end of the day, you're not your thoughts, you're not your feelings. There's something bigger inside you that's beyond that. Yeah, you're the space that's holding all this stuff, but it doesn't appear that way. I think sometimes we've got to come back to that space, but sometimes that space is just cluttered by too many thoughts, too many feelings, too many concepts, too many scripts in the mind. And so how do you arrive at that space? Well, first of all, you recognize I'm cluttered in my mind. And secondly, is how do I come back to the present moment? Perhaps speak it out with somebody else that you've got some stuff going on. Come back to that place of appreciation and gratitude, because most of us are very, very blessed, actually. If you've traveled to other countries, I have, through Asia, India, I realized, God, how lucky I am to have all these things in the West, that kind of thing. Um, and and the other thing is to stop shoulding on yourself. I should be wealthy. I should be in a job. This should not have happened to me. Yeah, because then should puts you back in the victim mode. So you might want to list down your shoulds and just change them to say, well, I choose. So I should be, I should have a lot more money in my life. Well, I choose to create a new opportunity to bring more money in.
Yeah.
So we need to drop the shoulds as well. And there's a lot of shoulds going on when you're feeling uncertain about things.
It doesn't matter how many times I hear that, it still makes me laugh. I always, as a coach, and even not as a coach, I mean, I think it's just trained into me now. When I hear words like in conversation, like should, have to, must, need, they're red flags. They are red flags to saying, okay, well, how about want or choose? Yeah, because it doesn't seem to be in alignment. Is something that you feel that you should have to do. It's not coming from inside of you. It's coming from. It seems to be coming from some sort of external pressure that, well, everyone else is doing this, so I should be doing something more like this, or this is what I think I should be doing to get ahead, but don't actually feel it in my bones and my heart yet. It's, that's what I hear, is like it's not fully aligned, and it's not coming from a place of actual want or desire. Is this is where sometimes the difference between having to push yourself to what you want or having the things you want pull you towards them. I think that starts to come into this a bit as well. But in terms of actual sort of day-to-day dealing with uncertainty, every day is uncertain and has the scope for being that. But a lot of the uncertainty we face doesn't necessarily need to lead to negative things. It's not all bad stuff we're talking about here. Like just life in general isn't uncertain. If you try and protect yourself from the uncertainties and the changes and challenges in life, you're actually going to be kind of wrapping yourself up in bubble wrap and trying to avoid all this stuff. You're going to be missing out on opportunity as much as you're going to be cutting, perhaps limiting your risk.
Yeah. I think it's important just to be okay with not knowing. And when I said when everything some years ago collapsed to me, I lost everything. I listened to a talk by a guy, and he was saying about embracing the I don't know space. That was really difficult because I was really scared about that, because I don't know what's next. I don't know where I'm going. I remember I was in Scotland at the time, and I didn't know whether I want to come back to London, or whatever. But I just thought, okay, I'm going to play with this. And then I met someone who invited me to, in fact, where you live, in Valencia, Spain. And then I met him. I thought I'd go for 2 weeks. Thought, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to go there anyway. That was just the next step. So I always knew what the next step was. And then I thought I'd be there for 2 weeks, but that ended up being 6 months. But the things, I was allowing myself to have this I don't know be the vehicle to open me up to something unusually good. And from that came a lot of blessings. Actually, I met some new friends. I learned a new language, and in fact, from that I don't know space, my wife came from that. I never planned to go to Spain to meet my wife. She didn't speak English. I didn't speak Spanish. But by allowing myself to be okay with I don't know, but moving forward to the next step, not over planning, but having a little bit of a plan, things just opened up. It was like, you can call it magic started to happen because I was okay with not knowing. That's just something from my own experience.
Isn't that funny? I mean, my story of coming to Spain kind of reflects some of yours to a degree as well. It's like I came to Spain because I could, and because I was a bit fed up in the UK. I had moved out of full-time working for other people, and was finally working for myself, and had enough work to be able to sort of say, well, I think I'm going to be okay now. So I made the move. And didn't know if things were going to work out or continue. It might be that I get to go and have 2 or maybe 6 months in Spain, maybe a bit longer. We'll see how it goes, and I might have to go back to England after that. We'll see. And I was okay with that. I was like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm actually okay with that. We will just see how it goes and deal with whatever comes up. That before, I think in my past, that would have been really hard to imagine myself being okay with that. But once I got myself okay with that, and got a nice apartment by myself, and I've probably been in Spain about 2 years before I met my husband. So if you're in the UK and single and looking to meet the love of your life and have a bit of excitement in life, you probably do need to move to Spain. I think that's the message of our story here. But it was it just kind of all flowed from that of I'm okay with we'll see where it goes. Even in our relationship, it was just like, I don't know that things are going to work out. I don't know that we're going to be that it's going to go well, or we'll be super happy together, and I'm okay with that. In fact, we both are. We've had that discussion, and I never could have imagined the things that have come into my life by allowing myself to be okay with the uncertainty, and not just to be okay with it, but to actually embrace it and say, yeah, let's put myself in uncomfortable or uncertain places where maybe I don't know how to act or respond or what's going to come from them. That opens up the realms of possibility, and that's something I actually get much more excited about now.
Yeah. So what if the COVID thing is now opening up new realms of possibility for the world, new creativity, new ideas, new innovations? I wonder what new possibilities will come from that. And perhaps going through what you went through, I guess you had a bit of trust as well. You had trusted that you didn't know, but you allowed trust to also help you as well, right? Was a bit of trust in that?
I allowed myself, and I've always felt it's important to have a belief that everything's going to work out all right. And if it doesn't,
Okay.
it doesn't. That's kind of my belief. I have no good reason to believe that. I just choose to believe it, and I find it a helpful belief. I know some people believe everything happens for a reason, all that kind of stuff. I'm not one of those people. I think stuff just happens. I think
Right.
we're the ones who make meaning out of it and
Yeah.
create the meaning in our lives. But I'm absolutely okay with that. But I do find having that belief of, yeah, everything's going to be fine, everything's going to work out, to be really helpful. I would liken it to, like, if you fall, and you're relaxed, or you drop and you're relaxed, you're gonna experience, probably depending on the height you fall from, you're gonna experience probably less damage than someone who's tense and more likely to break. So like in martial arts, you fall, you roll, you flow with things. Whereas if you fall stiff, you're probably going to hurt yourself. I think life can be a lot like that as well, is that having that flexibility to be able to go with what comes in life and flow with it as best you can. That's where you start to find opportunity. I'm very wary, because I see it so much, of people saying, oh well, there's so many opportunities during this pandemic and everyone should be jumping on it. Not everyone's going to do that, and not everyone is feeling mentally or emotionally strong enough to deal with that. And it's like, if what you need right now is just to get through this as best you can, do that and focus on that. But if you are in a place where you think, yeah, I think I could maybe do more, and maybe can take some real advantage of that, then great. Absolutely look for the opportunities and look for ways to do that, because undoubtedly there are opportunities. I'm seeing that in the sort of growth and avenues that I'm pursuing at the moment in my networks. I'm seeing some people having their best sales times ever by meeting people where they are, and making those connections, and going, people are still buying stuff, people are still looking to grow and develop, people the world is still turning, everything hasn't ended. So even if you maybe feel at a dead end with something right now, it doesn't mean that there aren't other opportunities. It's just maybe hard to see where they are or what they are right now.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, I think we've covered a lot here, Johnny.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's an important area, because I think everyone deals with uncertainty every day. We don't always acknowledge it. We don't always face up to the reality of it, but it's there. And I think a lot of the time we don't, is because it makes us uncomfortable, and we don't like stopping and thinking about things that make us uncomfortable, or being in that uncomfort or discomfort zone.
Yep. I like what you said before. No matter what happens, I know it's gonna be okay, and that to me is wisdom. And so, from uncertainty, from my own experience, and I'm sure we've all gone. Whoever's watching this, I'm sure we've had uncertain periods where we get intuition, wisdom. There's wisdom that comes through. If you have that mindset, you know what? I know it's going to work out. I don't know how, but somehow it's going to work itself out. I think that's one of the most comforting things. And the other thing is, I'm going to take Buddhism again. I don't care how difficult things are on this planet or with us, or if we have depression or whether we're feeling overjoy, no condition is permanent. There is impermanence. We're living in a realm of impermanence. COVID will
Yeah,
come and go.
yeah,
The downturn in the economy will come and go. I know it's not easy. I know it's uncomfortable. I know we could lose things and all the rest of it, right? I have this angst about me. What will come and go? It's just impermanent. If you notice that, that is also a sense. That's wisdom. That helps you get through and cope with
yeah.
the situation.
Yeah, it's interesting actually because what that makes me think of is there's an author called Matthew Haig. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he has I think he's currently in bestseller charts with his new book, The Midnight Library, which is a really lovely book, by the way, and I thoroughly enjoy his reading. He's a fascinating author, but he's also someone who's very open about his own experiences with depression and his the point in which his life, I think it was somewhere around 10 years ago, where he was ready to end it all. You know, he was he wanted to finish his life, and has since written a book called Reasons to Stay Alive. And I think that's one of the things that sort of comes up in that, the impermanence of things, is like that it doesn't last forever. And even if things seem really dark right now and you can't see any light out there for the future, it's there. And it does require a certain level of trust or belief to just grab onto that and say, it is there, even if I can't see it, even if I can't feel it right now, things will be better, things will change. Because the only thing you can actually guarantee in life is change. Things will change, things will be different. Whether the change is good or bad ultimately comes down to the meaning that we make of it and what we choose and decide for ourselves. You know, I think of that thing from we both work with Harv Eker, and one of the things from one of his trainings is, are you painting the world with black or white? You know, you can either paint it all black and dark, or you can paint the future white and bright for yourself. But we always have that choice, and it doesn't need to be shades of grey either. I think we kind of need to choose. Are we catastrophizing, making things worse for ourselves, and imagining all the worst outcomes and possibilities, and making ourselves feel bad and stealing all the joy and happiness from our lives? Or is actually everything, this is an Eckhart Tolle thing as well, but is everything okay in this moment, right here, right now? Are you okay in this moment? The chances are that you are, and just sort of, so be as present as you possibly can. I think maybe that's something you haven't really sort of hit on that much, but I think the sort of being fully present in your life is a big part of being able to deal with uncertainty and being able to be okay with whatever comes up in your life, and to be very actively involved in that, in your decision making and the choices you're making at the time, and how you feel about things. Like being fully present, not being in the past and sort of thinking about, did I do the right thing, or did I mess this up, and should I have said that, should I have done that, blah blah blah, or being stuck in the future. What if this happens? What if I lose this? What if everything, or what if I don't have enough money next month? What if I don't have enough class? What if everything goes away? That we end up that probably more that at the moment, the catastrophizing thing of, when things aren't necessarily going our way, we imagine the worst possible outcomes, instead of saying, okay, well, that's what it seems to be, and maybe bad things will happen, maybe good things will happen. But one thing's for sure, if you're focused on all the bad stuff, if you're focused on the catastrophes and stuff, you are far more likely to create that, unless you can reposition yourself and refocus, reframe, and get yourself thinking, okay, well, it's not necessarily bad. It does depend on what I do and how I react and respond, and hopefully get yourself to at least a more emotionally neutral position, if that's the best you can get to, first of all, and then hopefully move from there into feeling more positive and saying, this is a case of either the world's happening to you, or you do have influence and impact on the world. There are things you can influence, there are things you can impact. Focus on those, and less on the things that you can't change or do anything about.
Well, we should never underestimate the power of our own thoughts, because we live in a thought-based world. Everything is made up of thought. So if we're thinking catastrophe, then those thoughts are very, very powerful, and they create emotions and they create the results. So equally, we can use the very same thought power to change the story. We can, in coaching, as you know, we have reframes.
Yeah.
If we say, well, success is for others, but not for me. Well, how can I reframe that to support me? Well, success is for others, and also success is for me. Why not? It's a thought. I'm going to choose to change the thought to support my story, because I'm living in a thought-based world, so I might as well make it up to support me.
Yeah, there is a question that may not always feel like the right question to ask, but where you can, I think you should, to ask yourself, how could this be the best thing that ever happened?
Mm.
And I think it does sometimes come to being able to ask yourself a question, like, what could be the good in this? How could this be the best thing that happened? Because they're kind of these questions that they're open-ended questions. They don't necessarily have a final answer, but they at least start to get your brain focused on thinking about the good, the opportunity, moving yourself in the right direction. There's one that comes from I think it's from Dan Millman, the enlightened warrior guy, the ways of
Peaceful
peaceful
warrior
warrior,
guy, yeah.
peaceful
Yeah.
warriors. No, I really like Dan. I've seen him speak in London before, and I really enjoyed his talk. But he talks about this sort of thing of asking this question to yourself of, how good could I stand my life to be? Instead of this sort of mental thing that we often do to ourselves, like, well, what next? What crappy thing is going to happen next? What's the next shoe that's going to drop? Or these horrible things always come in threes, or let's have one, what's going to be 2 and 3? That we're actually setting ourselves up for that expectation of that we're going to find these awful things. The chances are you will. You start looking for them, you will probably find them, and you may actually be unconsciously creating them as well. Whereas if you start asking yourself the more positively focused questions, our brain likes to answer the questions that we ask ourselves. Like, how good could you stand your life? I don't know how good I could stand my life. I'm willing to find out, and I'm willing to ask myself that on a daily basis. How could something that's going on right now be that it maybe doesn't feel positive be the best thing that's ever happened? I can probably start finding some answers to those sorts of things. It completely changes my energy, my feeling about what's going on. And it's so much easier to move forward and focus on what's going on in your life if you feel good. And we do
I like
have
what you
some
just said
control
there,
over
yeah.
that.
Asking questions the right kind, as you say, if you ask for resourceful questions, you get resourceful answers. If you ask crap questions, you'll get crap answers. Why is my life like this? Why is this happened in the world? Why am I
Why
not
me?
getting ahead? Why me? So what if this is the best thing that ever happened to me? What good could come from this? I wonder what amazing things will happen this week, this month, this year. I wonder that kind of stuff. What possibilities are open to me in times of uncertainty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many opportunities could I stand to have come my way? How many clients could I cope with having?
Yeah.
How much income could I stand to make this month, this year? It's like nice open-ended questions that aren't saying, okay, well, I'm only going to be happy if because I think I think a lot of this maybe even ties into this sort of idea of conditional happiness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The people saying, okay, well, I haven't got the income level I want, so I'm not happy. I haven't got the job that I want, so I'm not happy. I haven't got the relationship I want, so I'm not happy. But I'll be happy when. I'll be happy if. I'll be happy when I have this. That's conditional happiness, and it's. Whilst I say it's not necessarily a wrong thing, it's what a lot of people are, again, perhaps robbing themselves of joy with, that happiness being a choice rather than a destination. I think that's
So what happens if I could be happy for no reason? If I allowed myself to be? What would happen if I allowed myself to be happy in uncertain times with no job, no money, for no reason?
Yeah.
What would happen? Maybe I'd feel a little bit happier.
Perhaps you don't actually need a reason to be happy. Perhaps you could actually just choose that for yourself and decide, even though there are terrible things in the world, even though there are horrible things going on, even though there are people bullying each other or fighting each other, even though there are people being mean and doing horrible things, and the world can be a crappy place sometimes, could I still choose to be happy anyway? Could I still choose to meet my life being and feeling happy, I think we do have to actively make that choice, because otherwise, if your happiness is conditional on making a certain amount of money, having the right house, having the right job, having the right relationship, having the right things going on in your relationship, whatever else, if it's conditional, then you're only going to feel happy for very brief moments of life, and it's going to be very fleeting. It's kind of like this whole thing of hedonic adaptation with goals. It's like we normalize things very quickly. You hit an achievement, you're probably going to feel good about it, maybe I think research shows maybe for up to about 2 weeks. I think that is going to be from several days up to 2 weeks. You might feel good about that achievement, and then it's normalized. But the same thing happens with negative events as well. Something bad happens in your life, we generally normalize it within about a couple of weeks, and we always return to our baseline level, which is where we spend most of our time at. And I always look at it this way: like, when somebody asks you, are you happy? Do you think about, oh, when's the last time I was happy? Or what was the last big achievement I've had? I don't think you do. I think you ask someone if they're happy, they'll think about how they feel right now, but you'll also tend to think about, are you generally happy day to day? And that's what we tend to answer, and that's your baseline. It's like, okay, are you generally happy as a person? Are you generally showing up in your life as a happy person, rather than someone who just has moments of happiness or some experience that, or wishes for it in their lives? And so that is, I think, the difference between like whether you are actually happy or not. I know there are people who sort of coach and are experts on this and can probably put me right, or maybe add more to that conversation as well. But that's my take on it, is like, well, you do have to make this conscious choice. And again, it's not always easy, and some days probably not going to always manage it. But if you actually want to experience a happier life and a better quality of life, you have to choose to show up as that in your life. This does become the conversation about, who do you have to be? Who do you have to show up as? And so if most people, you ask most people what they want, nearly one of the standard answers is, I want to be happy. And yet most people don't know how to.
Yeah, that's usually the thing. If I want the big house, but really what I want is to be happy. But what happens if you could be happy and have sadness? What happens if you could be happy with feeling angry or frustrated? You can still be happy.
Yeah.
It's a different context. You're realizing that happiness is not, so the sadness and the anger is just something that comes through me, not from me. But I can still be happy. I can still smile while I'm feeling sad. I mean, I know in Buddhism, in meditation, when you do insight meditation, you might have all this hell realm stuff going on in the mind, but you can still have a smile while you're looking into that. It's weird, isn't it? It's a kind of a paradox.
Yeah, I a lot of my background history is in the world of customer service and hospitality. And it's always amazed me, particularly in the airline industry, how many people are kind of miserable as like customer facing staff. It can be a bit miserable or grumpy, and not always very smiley. And it's now and again we just encounter people who have such a magical, happy energy. Like, you really feel that radiating out of them as well, and just keep smiling. And sometimes when you actually get to have a conversation with them, there may be really some really difficult things going on in their life, but they still keep that energy. They keep that decision, or that this is who I am, this is how I show up in the world, this is how I meet life. Staying, they don't want. There's a risk of sort of getting into that sort of cult of positivity, thinking you always have to be that and putting that pressure on yourself. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, you can actually influence your emotional state a lot more than you may even realize. And that's what I'm saying. If you can make that choice and be happy on more days than not, and have a better life experience more days than not, then great. But don't feel that you have to be that. It's like, it's still your choice. You still get to choose this. And I'm very aware that I don't want to sort of create this sort of happiness cult either, of feeling like you always have to paint a smile on no matter what. It does have to some degree come from within, and be a part of, maybe even having to train yourself a bit to show up more like that, and to have that experience more often.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Wow, yes, makes good sense there, Johnny. Where we can go on and on and on. I'm just aware, we've been at this now for 50 minutes.
Yeah, and there probably is a lot further we could go, but yeah, we will.
There's a lot more we can talk about. Yeah, I mean, I could talk more, but I'm just aware of, somebody watching the video, maybe they've got a pretty big download here. or some ideas.
Yeah. We maybe can come back to some of these areas again on another call. Certainly, we'll have some more chats again in the future, James. But it has been a really great conversation. I think we will kind of draw things to a close. But we'd certainly like to see comments from you, any questions or comments, and we can come back, or areas that you might like to see discussed on the show. This is a new show, a new podcast. It's called Points of Change. So if you're joining us on the live show, great, thank you for that. But if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Please give us a like on the channel, and remember as well to hit the subscribe button as well, and make sure that you are tuned in for future episodes, so that we can give you all the latest. So it won't always be me and James, but you will see me on every show. We're going to bring you different guests as well, but make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the show, and get the bell to get alerted of every new show that's coming up. Follow me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, YouTube, wherever, and I'll look forward to seeing you again on future shows. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you. I hope it's been a useful and helpful conversation for you, and we'll see you again soon. James, thank you for joining me. And
thank you, Johnny. Goodbye. Good talk, good conversation. Speak soon.